Hello, coding experts. We're here with some of the top minds in the coding space, ready to share their secrets about moving online. Today, we'll talk about how they made the move to online learning, how they formed academies and found talent that would expand their revenue and reach, and how they turned difficulties into opportunities. So, are you ready to learn how to successfully move your coding academy online? Before we do that, let's welcome the founder, CEO of Bright, my friend, Dimitri. It was his idea to start this webinar series, so we always start with him and get a few words from Dimitri. Dimitri, welcome to your show.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Happy to have you here, and I'm excited to talk about this particular topic, moving online. You know, we all have experienced a pretty drastic shift in the last 2 years in the education space, where online was at some point the only place to be in. But now things are opening up, and and online is and people moving back to in person, but online is still gonna continue to be. But how do we make this effective? How do we make our online presence effective? And this is a topic that has been pretty important for a lot of people, and I'm pretty excited to talk about this with the experts who completely nailed it. And I'm very impressed with our panel speakers today, with their track record, their experience, how they nailed it. So I'm very stoked to get going.
Cool. Well, listen, we've got a serious group of people in the audience today as well. That's what's really awesome about these panels, that we also get great audiences, founders, CEO, operations managers, key executives. So we want them to let us know who they are, where they're from, and the Facebook chat is the place to do that. The Facebook chat for Bright is actually the place to do that. We've got Anna from Cascade on our team, and she's going to kind of be leading the chat. And this is live. This is very live TV. So if you have questions, comments, I guess concerns, let us know. We will try and address them, but we really want the audience to be a part of this.
Yes, one more thing. If you don't know what our Facebook page, it's facebook.com/gobright.io, just like our website. Go ahead, join us through Facebook, throw in your questions, and we'll make sure that we address as many as possible.
Yeah, totally. So without further ado, enough seeing us. Let's bring up the panel.
Yes.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Cool. Live TV. Very cool. So our panelists today, they're experts in the coding space for one reason or another. And we've got a format for this. The way we've done these is that each one of our panelists is going to have a question that they're going to get to answer, about 3 minutes to answer it, 2 minutes of crosstalk and discussion. Then we'll move along. We're going to have time at the end to just kind of talk as well. Our first panelist, Prakash, graduated from Carnegie Mellon University School of Computer Science in 2019, spent 2 years with Apple, we've heard of them, and dove right into his own adventure with Slingshot. So, tell us a little bit about Slingshot before we get going, and then we'll give you your question.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks, Josh, Chen. Thanks, Dimitri, and thanks to all the panelists for sharing time with me. I'm Ak. Like Josh mentioned, I'm a recent Carnegie Mellon grad. I founded Slingshot. A great way to understand Slingshot is think about what basketball scouting is to high school basketball. That's what we are for teenagers gifted in the areas of computer science, math, and STEM. Our goal is not only to help teenagers or ambitious teenagers to not only accelerate their careers, but also help companies really find such talent before anybody else. So we want to be the future Nike of smart, ambitious teenagers. So that's what Slingshot is. And that's a little bit about myself as well. Yeah.
Gave me that pitch when we saw each other at a conference last week in San Diego, ASU GSV. And I was like, dude, you got to be on this webinar. So here we are. So here's your question. What piece of advice do you have for others who want to find the best talent when it comes to coding teachers? We got 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great question. Whether you're going out there to get personally enriched or whether you're trying to accrue talent for your own organization, I think the best places to start would be colleges themselves. You can, of course, hit up the Carnegie Mellons, the Stanfords, the MITs, the Georgia Techs. you'll find a lot of motivated and ambitious college graduates who just want to give back to society. I remember when I was a freshman coming into Carnegie Mellon, the first business I wanted to start was, college counseling, because everybody's in that mode to kind of, oh, we know how to crack the app, we know how to give back. That's actually, one of a great place to find really gifted and talented people in computer science, and also have them on as your mentors or coding instructors. Famously enough, college graduates are always broke, so they're always looking to make some side cash. So such people and such individuals are a great fit if you're starting an academy. The other thing, since the world has gone so globalized, is a lot of the teachers, not only just in the United States, but also to China, India, maybe the UK, and some places of Europe, they're very open to exploring more opportunities that they might have never had outside of their own schools. So I've often interacted with high school and middle school teachers who want to get out of their schools and give back to society on a larger scale. So often I've found teachers very willing to kind of put themselves out there, and also talk about computer science and teach computer science as part of many organizations. And then, the last thing is, of course, all of these large companies like Google, Apple, you name it, they always have their own, kind of coding organizations, volunteering groups, and employee groups are always looking to give back and teach programming to younger kids or college goers. And that's, I think, a very underutilized source. If you're starting off your coding academy and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be great if I had somebody from Google teaching my kids how to code? It seems like, oh, I can't even get somebody like that, but you'd be surprised of how many people are just willing to get out there and give back. And there's specific groups that such people form to be able to find one another and teach kids how to code. So those are some of the sources that I would directly target. Of course, there's so many, and one shameless plug here is Slingshot. In our community, we find such ambitious and smart teenagers that the graduates out of our program and community often end up teaching the new incomers into our community. So peer-to-peer teaching is also something that has become really effective and something that I've seen. And it's also awesome for a kid who is just getting into computer science to learn from somebody who's maybe just a year or two above them, because it also adds that element of, oh, of course, they're a Google engineer, they'll probably know everything. But here's a kid who I know who's 2 years older to me, and they're teaching me how to code. That there's a smaller stepping stone of perhaps inspiration that a kid can get to and yearn for, versus an adult teaching them. So yeah, that's, I think, my thoughts on that.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree with you on the peer-to-peer. And another thing is that it's not only the stepping stone kind of smaller, but also, when we're talking about teaching kids, they don't see their peers as an adults. When they see adults, it's a little bit different. It's like, oh, they're adults, they're knowledgeable, right? Kid cannot really relate to adult as easy as to other kid, even the kid is maybe 3-4 years older, right? Yeah. But actually, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, what are your thoughts on hiring high school students as teachers?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I mentioned. At Slingshot, we are the home to some of the smartest and most ambitious teenagers. So virtually, what happens is often these teenagers go on to work for Y Combinator, Techstars, startups, and stuff. So these are the kinds of teenagers who know what they're doing, they know what they want to do, and they are often very effective teachers to other students in the community, and they're 16, 17, 18 themselves and in high school. So I've seen that work really well. And we specifically have a program within our community where such high schoolers or graduates out of our program, they teach students who are incoming into our community just for free, just to kind of share their knowledge and such. And it's really cool because the amount of engagement that a senior might have with a freshman in high school might be way higher than an adult teaching a freshman, where it's like, oh, I have to look down in my book and take notes and stuff. It's much more fun. It's much more interactive, and it's much more relatable. So I think that's a great idea to get high schoolers to teach. Of course, there's a level of vetting and performance that you'd expect before you onboard a high schooler. And if you ever wanted to hire a high schooler, you know where to come.
Yeah, totally. Well, the thing about Ak here is that we're happy to have him. We're only going to get to have him for another 19 minutes because the dude is successful. He's got an investor call that he can't miss. And so we can all respect that, being entrepreneurs in the education space. We're going to bring in Branka Bebić. Branka spent 15 years in the corporate world working for Google and Facebook. We've heard of them as well, before starting her own coding academy called Coding Giants. She strives to give children a better future through online offerings. And Branka, here's your question. What is the first step online academies should take when adding online services? Talk to us.
Honestly, thank you for having me, guys. I only started online because I started my business when COVID was up and running for 6 months already.
Yeah.
So this is actually a franchise. It's a Polish originated company. And I was lucky that they turned online in two weeks when the COVID started. So when I contacted them, I basically only wanted to do online because it didn't make sense to do anything else. But they had most of the stuff ready and processes already set up. So it wasn't honestly that hard. For me, it was a challenge of starting my own business and all of the stuff that comes with starting your own business, but doing it online with kids and with a company that was doing it for the whole semester before that, with having the right partners, it wasn't hard at all. It was just a lot of operational work to set it all up. But besides that, it was a no-brainer. I can't say it was a challenge in that sense. It was actually helpful to do it online rather than in class.
If you're a part of a franchise group, then sounds like so. Yeah. You probably have colleagues who are franchise owners who maybe did have to make the switch online. What did you hear from them?
No, well, not really, because I'm their first successful franchise that went out outside of Poland. So they had a lot of experience within Poland. They didn't have that much experience outside. And we had a huge success of getting 220 kids on our first enrollment cycle. Wow. So they didn't really expect me to actually be ready for a big guys game and to have everything ready and set up in processes. They were like, oh, she's probably going to get 50 kids, so, we can manage that manually. But that wasn't the case. So it was mostly having processes ready and CRM ready to cover all that, because you cannot handle that manually. That just doesn't make sense. But I was lucky that they already worked on this program for past 6 or 7 years. And it's the same whether you do it online or in class. There is no basically difference. Kids always have the program that they have to pass. It's actually a kids coding academy. It's not for adults. It's for kids from age 7 till age 18 to 19, so high schoolers and middle schoolers. They have to know how to read, but basically that's it. That's the only thing they have to know to kind of enroll. So it's a bit different story, and I didn't cross the path that no one went through already, so it was much easier.
But let me ask you something. So the processes that you guys have established were designed initially for in-person, but there are definitely some differences between teaching online and teaching in person, right? One of the biggest issues is engagement, right? How do you keep kids engaged? I mean, what are the tools that you use, right? How do you connect online? How do you get them together online? How do you tell us a little more about what was your thought process when you were putting this together and said, hey, all right, I need to have X, I need to have Y, and I need to have Z to be able to actually launch 100% online successfully?
It was, it's actually the curriculum that did the biggest, basically. You have to have a good curriculum. You cannot come to class and say, kids, we're going to do something. What's really lucky with Coding Giants is that they tested these materials for the last 6 years. So they know what works, what doesn't. And basically every class that the kids have, it actually looks like they have to code a game, and they have a finished game at the end of the class. It's like building Legos, but online. So it's basically the same whether they do it in class. They have to be and look at the monitor anyway. So why would parents have to drive them somewhere for them to look at the monitor and then look at it for an hour and a half every week, and then they have to drive back and never look at it again until the next week when they have class already. So what we do is, probably about the chats called the Discord that usually gamers use. So we connect all the kids from the same class into one Discord group. So within the week, and when they are not on class, they can actually still speak to teachers and speak to themselves to keep them engaged and to keep them kind of excited about the next class. But the biggest thing that they like is that they actually create a game after each lesson, and it's the game they programmed. So they love it. Like there is it's not a trick. Like we have purely programmers who are their teachers. So we don't hire anyone from school system. It's only programmers that, as Ash said, want to give back to society. And they are actually creating games, and then they can show to kids in school and to mom and dad that they actually created games. And then they sometimes even create a game where they cheat and they know how to add points to themselves and not add points to others. And, it's the stuff that with kids, it has to be fun, and they have to have a finished project by the end of the class. So it wasn't that rich, but like that big of a mastermind behind it. You just have to have like a logical thing that kids get turned on to, and they really want to do that again. Like now we have vacation for 2 weeks and they're crying because they don't want a vacation from our school. Like they're fine getting a vacation from normal school, but please, like let's I even had some kids telling like, can you please tell to Coding Giants we don't want vacation from this. So it's keeping them. Yeah,
I don't want to jump the gun.
Yeah,
I don't want to jump the gun on this group, but next webinar is about curriculum, so we're going to hit that topic very hard.
I would have to invite one of my teachers. They are more
there we go
aligned with that one than me.
But we've got a question from Donna Curtis. She said, how is the schedule structured? Set times are independent. How many children per class is structured time? I'm gonna throw that to Vishal since he's been sitting so patiently. Vishal is a friend, and I saw him last week in San Diego as well. A tech executive with over 25 years of engineering and product management leadership experience across Google and other great startups. Google, that word keeps popping back up. He runs Two Sigma School. So Vishal, we've got another question for you, but let's just start with that one from Donna, which is how is the schedule structured? Set times are independent. How many children per class if a structured time?
You muted, Vishal.
Oh, we got to get you unmuted. There you go, man.
All right.
Thank you, Josh, for having me, and thank you, Dimitri, as well. This question is the answer to this question is there's no one size fits all. You really have to find out who your audience is. If your audience is very young kids that may need one-on-one attention, then it's a very different situation than if you are teaching high schoolers, where one-on-one may not necessarily be required. So we've seen a whole gamut, so what we do is we offer independent study for students who are high schoolers and who have the ability to do work on their own, and they get instructor time as needed on demand. We also have classes that we run with 10, 12 students in the same class at a time that is either aligned with their school schedule, because we do teach as external instruction provider for traditional brick-and-mortar schools. For students who are taking our classes after school hours on their own, we essentially give them freedom to choose a time that works for them, whether it is on a weekend or a weekday. So there is a lot of variability just based on who the audience is, how young or mature they are in terms of their own learning ability, and that would dictate how many students you want in a class, that it keeps the class dynamic such that every student is engaged, gets the right amount of attention they need. So without knowing the context, it's hard for me to answer that. Just to say that we have seen the variability across the spectrum just based on the age ranges that we are teaching.
What would be a good starting point in your opinion? So let's say I'm doing everything in person and I want to move online. What would be a good starting point for me? Like, hey, the easiest is to do small group classes and then if you want to add more, add this or add that. What would you say?
Yeah, if you're running in-person classes, I would say a good place to start would be to look at if you want to keep the number of students to be, somewhere between what you currently have in your in-person class versus somewhere below that. I wouldn't go higher, but I would go lower and see, essentially whenever you're hitting the right balance between every student getting the attention they need, as well as keeping the students engaged.
Ak, do you get any feedback from the talent that you have, the LeBrons of the world in your galaxy, of the size class that they would like in an online space?
No, to be quite honest, no, because Slingshot, we don't focus on direct instruction by any means. Our goal is to scout such students and connect them with awesome companies. So we wouldn't have the best information or data on that. I'd probably punt that to Vishal or Branka.
Let's go, Branka. Good call.
Yeah, well, we have really scheduled class. They are usually in the afternoon hours or on the weekends. Kids have to show up on that individual class. We can move them to a different group if they ask, but that's like per group and once. Because usually kids have multiple schedules and soccer class or all the other, so they need to have a day that's available and the time, and then they show up at class the same as they would do in class person. It's basically the same in class for 95 minutes. They connect. We have groups up to 10 kids. If they are, we have age groups. So if the 7 to 9 age group, we give them up to 8 kids per class. Usually it's up to 10 if they are older, and they show up once a week on their scheduled time. And that's basically it. We keep it quite simple and actually a copy of what we would do if it was in person. What's great with online is that you don't have that limitation of how many kids can you have in class. I mean, you can form another group because it's just another Google Meet meeting, and you don't have to have a classroom available. So it's much easier to scale business online than to scale it within the classroom, because, for example, Saturday at 10 is our most popular slot, and I can have up to 17 groups then because I have 17 teachers that I hired, for example. And I wouldn't have 17 classrooms available probably at that time. So I have kind of a very concrete answer because
that's good.
What we do. Yeah.
Vishal, let's roll it back. I mean, to you, and Don's got a follow-up question, which I think is a good one. And from my experience in the tutoring and the enrichment space, instructors are tough, and you've got different schedules for kids and for parents and for instructors. So there's your question right there. How then do you make sure there are coding instructors available at all these variable schedules?
Well, one of the beauty of online is that you can have teachers in different time zones. So that just makes it extremely flexible for students and teachers in multiple time zones. And so just gives additional, flexibility, I guess, that you would not have if every student was in the same physical location and the teachers had to be in the same physical location. But at the, beyond that, I think it's really a question of your demand and your supply. If where your supply is coming from, if you have supply from folks who are who have different availability constraint or different availability, it might, it's ultimately a scheduling problem. It is a logistically hard problem to solve, and you could go with either a fixed time, and then depending on your supply, and may have a trade-off in demand, or you can have a flexible schedule, and try to do the matching. So at scale, it would become a matching problem that you'd have to solve algorithmically. It becomes unsolvable after, once you have a certain number of classes to solve it manually.
Yeah. Ak, what do you think? Is there, how does Slingshot fit in this picture here in terms of finding and never-ending-ish supply?
Yeah, so going off of what Vishal says, at scale it becomes an algorithmic and computer sciencey challenge. That's what we do. We scout students not only off of high schools but also the open web. Um, so yeah, managing supply at some scale would require the intervention of some kind of technology. But until that point, you can find product market fit without having to build any technology out. I mean, as far as like scheduling goes, there's your classic when to meet, when is good. I would definitely, if I wanted to start a school today, I'd probably start there,
Yeah.
shamelessly just using stuff like that.
Yeah.
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 I think you can worry about there when you get there. It's a good problem to have, I would say.
That's definitely a good problem to have. Ox got a good problem. He's got to roll because he's got an investor meeting. So you are excused, but thank you for joining us. And
Thanks so
Donna,
much, guys.
you know, this is a community. So I think reaching out to Ox would be a good thing if you have that question. So good luck with the meeting. We're sure you'll do awesome.
Thank
so
you.
Dimitri, yeah, totally. Dimitri, what are your thoughts so far?
So basically, going back to my experience running an academy, and when we had to switch online, what we've done is pretty simple, right? We broke down into like 1 hour sessions. So between 3 to 7 p.m., 3 1 hour sessions with some break in between, and we set the capacity for each one of those sessions, right? Let's say 10 or like let's say 30 students maximum, and then we would have parents pre-schedule those classes. So that way, a week ahead of time, we knew exactly how many teachers do we need for each one of those sessions. And if we get once we started getting more, more demand, so to say, right, more students who wanted to join a certain session, we would create another classroom, another meeting, and we would start adding students there. So I'd say, I agree. Just start simple. Start with something very, very basic. 3 1 hour slots. You have, how many you set your capacity, so that way you will not go more than that, and then start filling up that capacity, and just have parents have train your customers to actually book those sessions early. Train them to make sure that they need to understand that you cannot operate an ad hoc environment. You need to have predictability. You need to know ahead of time when they're coming. Yes, things happen, right? Sometimes schedules don't work. Some things come along, but just on kind of general setting, it's like they should respect your time as much as you respect their time. So that when we were starting, we used like Calendly, right? We just use like simple, like, hey, where do we go? Where do we start? Just use Calendly, and you can set up in Calendly. You can set up the capacity for the meeting, and and just once you start growing, once you start getting into the area of like, hey, it's a good problem to have. We have way too many students, right? And then how do we go about filling up the teachers? That's when you start, all right, where do I hire, how do I hire? That's a different topic, right? That's what Ak was mentioning. Yeah, go to your local high schools, find the AP computer science students who just love to code. Like at Mighty Coders, I'd say 80% of our teachers were high school students, and they were phenomenal. They were amazing. They were phenomenal, talented, and and really really engaging. So yeah, that's what I would that would be my recommendation. Start simple, and then as you start growing, you can start navigating, trying different things.
That's good. We skipped Vishal's question, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to tee it up for him. We got some great questions for Donna, which I think we all recognize are problems, but good problems to have. So Vishal, think way back when you started your online coding academy, which was 2 years ago maybe, but seems like 200 years ago. What was the biggest challenge you faced going online?
We started online, so the main problem we are trying to solve really is there a demand for the product we're trying to build? There is a lot of once you go online, you're no longer constrained by sort of the coding academy down the street, and therefore the supply for the number of choices for parents and students are really growing. You could be enrolling in an academy in Croatia, sitting here in the US, or vice versa. And so the biggest question, I think, if you're thinking about starting an online academy, is what's your differentiator? Because the competition is global. And
Well,
so for us, sorry?
when you have kids, it's not because it's a local language. So that's what helped. If it is a children's school, you have to have, like, I cannot hire American teachers. It has to be in Croatian because, basically it's kids. But it's the whole different point of like having a global school. Then it's a different picture. Like if I was opening Dubai right now, which I'm thinking of, it's an English school. Then the competition is not schools in Dubai. The competition is the whole world. And then you have to really be good at your job. When the competition is so small and it's in a local language, then it's a much easier story. So choose your bets wisely, I would say.
No, that's cool.
That's a fair point. Yes.
Yeah.
We're sitting in, in such a global, it's a global opportunity, but it seems like Branka is attacking a local one, and certainly you can be successful doing that.
Yeah. It depends what your goals are, but not everyone has to be Steve Jobs. I think the small businesses and medium-sized businesses are actually the ones building society and making a difference. So once they reach English level that well, like your corporate competition is Coursera, Udemy, whoever there is on a global level. But there is a huge market for kids who want to learn how to code. And you have a great pitch, and that's what someone said, like you have to have a differentiator. First one is you have a pitch that kids are on screen, but actually doing something useful. And you are teaching them something that if they really, really like it now, maybe they'll decide to be programmers and actually be able to make a decent amount of money in the future for themselves for like their future living. So it's like parents are willing to kind of invest in this. So that's a really good starting.
But let me ask you a question. So, I mean, every other one promises that, right? Hey, it's a productive screen time. Every academy online, everybody says it's a productive screen time. Yes, we're building your kids' future. Yes, they're gonna get a great job with a great pay. That's pretty much. But Vishal, question to you: how do you cut through the noise?
How do you cut through the noise?
Yeah, there's just so much noise, so many promises that sound very, very similar. But how do you cut through the noise?
Yeah, that's. I think you have to find the niche that resonates with you and with the market that you're trying to address. So as Branka said, Croatian, very local problem. It was a niche for her that she can build a solid business in without having to worry about global competition. For us, the niche was how do we get high schoolers credit for what they're learning online, and how can we demonstrate results? So it's not just about, okay, you came in, you learned something, and you build some interesting games, but how do we ensure that the quality of what you're learning is actually good, and that somebody is willing to put their seal of approval and give you, credentials that would be recognized by colleges. And this is relevant for us because we're teaching at high school to students who are going to be in college in a year or 2 years and so forth. So identifying what your differentiator is just does require you to do a lot of market research, talking to your stakeholders, looking at who else is offering similar things, and how do you stand out. It's one of those very basic product market fit, market research that you would do, and you cannot do it without talking to a number of stakeholders. So as an example, when we started, I spoke personally to over 50 families, as well as over 50 superintendents and principals across the US, because those were our target market, to understand what were they really looking for, what was the gap that we could fill. And so I'd say, your own intuitions may guide you in the right direction, but ultimately the market will tell you,
Mhm.
whether what you have seems reasonable or seems differentiated enough.
Yeah, I agree. You gotta talk to your customers. You gotta find out what customers want. But also, keep in mind you gotta take everything with a grain of salt, right? You can't really just take everything your customers say for the face value, because a lot of the times they may have good ideas, but sometimes they may lead you in a completely different, area. You just gotta, sort that out, find what works, what would work for you, what is it that you can do, right? What is it that you're really capable of doing. So Vishal, let me ask you one more thing. So I know your space is high school, but if you were dealing with let's say elementary school students, maybe just an idea, what would be a good differentiator for elementary school, because credit doesn't really matter, what would be a good differentiator in that space, elementary or maybe middle school?
Yeah, I think a good differentiator. So if excuse me, if you were to look at options for middle schoolers, they're really trying to get into computer science at that age. And if the school of the local opportunities they have don't offer basic skills in programming and logic, what you're looking for is how do you make these students be really excited and interested in building something that would occupy them, even after the class, that they would be proud to show off, and that they can actually create something. One of the key differentiators, I would say, would be, can you make them think like innovators and creators rather than somebody who's following a recipe and made a game but was handheld throughout the whole process. And we have seen examples of that where students don't take ownership and pride in the actual result they achieve. And so I think just sort of sorting out how would you go about doing that and making kids feel that they've actually built something that came out of their own imagination, that they felt agency in directing. If you could achieve something like that, I think that would be a pretty good differentiator.
Yeah.
Let me ask that question a little bit differently to Branka, though. I am a part of a group that owns some franchises in the kids space sports. So there might be somebody out there saying, I want to go on, I want to create an online academy, but I don't want to have to put everything together myself. So can you talk about the benefits of the franchise opportunity? And in particular, Coding Giants, does it allow you to still be a creator, like Vishal was saying? Do you have a creator in your own space, though, even though you're part of a franchise?
Well, in terms of, I would never be able to do this if it wasn't for a franchise. Like, I wouldn't know how to create materials, and I think that curriculum is actually the stuff that brings the difference and makes the difference. You can't expect students to create something and be creative after first class, but after a semester of like 5, 6, 9 lessons of 90 minutes, they actually come themselves to teachers and show them what they did during the week and brag about what they accomplished. And that's I didn't know whether this was good business up until I was in mid to the end of my first semester, until I actually got a confirmation from my teachers what kids are bringing into class. I could have those information from Poland, and I did, and it was like all good. But you don't. It's your business. You're very much attached to it because it's your baby. And me seeing kids crying because the semester ended, I'm like, oh my God, thank God I'm in a good business. I was really lucky.
Totally.
And it's very personal in that sense. I have a freedom in terms of marketing, in terms of not even in terms I have to have approval from them, but because my background is in marketing for the last 15 years, they kind of gave me open hands to do whatever I wanted. And then they are happier with what I do than maybe sometimes even with what they do. So in terms of that, that's my strong suit. And that's where I would dare to meddle, like to meddle and to kind of do my own thing. In terms of curriculum and what we do with kids, I leave that honestly up to teachers. because teachers are the ones who want to do this job, who want to transfer knowledge to kids. And they feel these kids. So I don't micromanage them, and I don't tell them how they should do their job. They have a set schedule of a lesson that they have to go through. So they have to go through it. But, in coding, there are always some different stuff that you can do. But I leave it actually up to teachers to kind of get the kids involved. And they're usually young, and they're like in their 20s. So they are having fun with these kids. So that's how we actually make a difference. That's how when teachers sometimes skip some part of the lessons and do something else. And I don't even ask them to ask me whether they can do this. Like, do whatever you see fits with kids and whatever. But you have to have, teachers who are interested to do this job for that.
Dimitri, the franchise model, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, it really depends on what is it. Well, it depends on your personality. Like, for example, someone like Vishal or me, we're more of a, we're like to create new things, right? We like to build something from complete scratch, build our own, that's our baby. And then there are people who, they're really good at operations, organizing, managing operations, and just driving that machine, like what I see Branka is, right? She's, I probably, I suck at operations. Like I hate it. I have to hire someone who has skills like Branka who can do things for me, right?
Or I have to hire you to create curriculum. And then...
Exactly.
That's the next show.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Or, and in the return, Branka needs to hire someone like me, or like get like a curriculum from someone like me who already created that, and and great. So it really depends on what drives you. Right? What really drives you? Franchise is a great model. Franchise is a great model if you don't like to put new things in place, test them, get frustrated, fix them, and and then problem solve and and create. Right? If that's not you, franchise is really gonna be a great place for you to start. But if you if you don't like the operations, if you don't like, hey, here's the model already working, existing, but if basically if you don't like that, if you want to create, then start your own.
But it's also like sorry.
Go ahead. No, go.
Why I decided to do a franchise, like it's like there are steps that you have to make mistakes on, and I couldn't create the curriculum ever. Like, I'm not a programmer. I have an MBA degree and in economy and hospitality and tourism. Like, I would never be able to do this on my own. But I'm good in organizing and admitting to yourself to what you're good in and what something else can bring. Like, it can be a good business, even though it's not something of your own. Like a lot of stuff are already stuff are already invented in the world, and there is no need to create everything new every time. There are people who are in that sense, and I would never be able to do what Dimitri does ever. Like, I don't have those capabilities, but I have something else. So and it's good to have good partners. So if you're choosing a franchise, you really need to have deep dive conversations with franchise owners. To actually know that they're going to be good partners. We worked for 2 months on our contract, where we discussed every little detail of our cooperation for the next 10 to 15 years. And you have to, and that's why my corporate career helped, because I knew what are the stepstones possibly, and I'm not the one who came from straight to college and I'm going to open my coding school. You have some experience, so it's really good to actually choose right partners. If you have to have them.
Yeah, basically, you need to look at the franchisor as your same way as if you were looking for trying to find a co-founder for your business.
Same.
It's a relationship. Think about it's a business partner, right? Are you going to be happy with that business partner? Are you going to be happy with that co-founder? Right? Are they gonna cater to your needs, right?
And do they have the same goal as you? Because
exactly.
Like, what are their aspirations for the market? There's so many different things that happen.
I think we're delving into a whole nother topic. This show has been so interesting because I think there's been a lot to learn about being just an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur in the online space, online coding space. So that's great that these worlds are kind of colliding in a good way. Maybe partners is another webinar that we dive into. We want to spend the last few minutes talking about Bright, one of the reasons that we're here. And we've got a really cool commercial that we're going to run really quickly. Everybody's mics are going to be off, and we're going to watch this, and then we're going to come back and wrap this puppy up.
If I learn to code, I will be more creative. I will be a better problem solver.
And I will have more self-confidence.
If I learn to code, I'll be 40% more likely to become an inventor.
If I learn to code, I will have better focus.
And a higher chance of having a job I will enjoy. I will learn how to think outside the box. Be not afraid to fail. Will you let me learn to code? Will you let me learn to code?
The answer is yes.
That is such a great commercial. I love it.
Me too.
Thank you.
Dimitri, take the floor for 2 minutes here, and then let's land this thing.
Yeah. Well, to summarize, I think I'm hearing myself. To summarize, basically, we wanted to talk about how do we go online. So, scheduling is a big part. So the answer is start small. Start with something really small, right? Teachers, start local, and then expand global, right? You don't need to, there's so many areas where you can look for your talent to fill your needs, right? It could be local high schools, local colleges, or, things like Upwork, right? Upwork.com, where you can hire contractors, right? From anywhere, Philippines, India, UK, right? And it really is kind of the goal here is to create a good engagement, just as good as in the classroom and in person. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, like the engagement. And I think we didn't cover this a whole lot, but I think we can really go into covering that in our next webinar when we talk about the curriculum, because curriculum is essentially the core of the learning, right, of the academy, whether online or in person, and we can cover that. But overall, just start small, start with something, and then talk to your customers, find your differentiator, and go with that differentiator to cut through the noise. Did I cover everything?
I think you did, but start small. But the only thing I would say not to start small, and for people who are starting their online academy, is reach out big. Dimitri, Branka, Vishal, like these people. Well, I just met Branka. I know Vishal. I know Dimitri. I'm sure they'd be happy to help. Ak as well. So find them on LinkedIn, or we can actually put some information out there in terms of emailing. It's a community. So we will talk curriculum next time. Branka, Vishal, Ak, thanks for joining. Dimitri, thanks for putting this party on. I think we learned a lot about the online academy and getting online. And everybody else, thank you for joining. And we'll see you for our next show about curriculum in the online space for coding. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great day.